The original Windlands on PSVR1 is a game that I fondly remember. Even though the move controller's tracking was absolutely backwards and horrendous at times, it was so much fun swinging through the open world in that game and exploring with an amazing backing atmospheric track and gigantic behemoth-like creatures that were long since dead making up the terrain. The only thing I'd heard about its sequel is that it took on a lot more of a light-hearted tone with more of a focus on actual story and less of a focus on the atmosphere of the original. And after playing through it, I can see what they mean. Windlands 2 takes a different direction to the original in some respects, but builds on the foundation of what the original created to make a fantastic PSVR2 port of a game that you shouldn't miss if you're looking for a Spider-Man type game on PSVR2. So let's talk about Windlands 2. But before we do that, we've just reached 10k subs. If you would like to support the channel, the easiest way to do that is by hitting the big subscribe button down below. You can't miss it. Anyway, let's get on to the review. Before we talk about the game a little bit more in depth in terms of gameplay and story and music and all of those features, I want to first tackle the game as a PSVR2 port because Windlands 2 is nothing new for the VR space. It's been out for quite a while, and my worry was that we would get a port that didn't have much care or precision put into it at all, and would simply be low resolution with no implementation of haptics, running at reprojected 60 to 120 Hz. I'm very happy to report that that is not the case here. Windlands 2 runs at a unreprojected 90 or 120. Again, I'm not the best at figuring out refresh rates in VR, but it is unreprojected and buttery smooth. It looks incredibly sharp, about as sharp as, say, Walkabout Mini Golf. I think it's VR Monkey that did the port for this game, and I believe they're also the studio doing the porting for Ghost of Tabor, so if this is their track record, going off how good Windlands 2 looks and how well optimized it is, and the fact that I ran into no crashes, hopefully Ghost of Tabor is also on the same level. But yeah, Windlands 2 looks fantastic in the headset. The colors pop, and it's the best looking version of the game by far. The PSVR 2 features aren't neglected either, with both head haptics and controller haptics and adaptive triggers being used to a full extent. Whether it's the triggers being used to simulate your grapple as you traverse around the world, or the head haptics being set off when you get hit by an enemy explosion, there's a lot to love here as a PSVR 2 port for Windlands, and it's clear there was care put into this. So if you already know all about Windlands 2 and just were wondering how it is as a PSVR 2 port, there you go. Now let's get on to the further in-depth review and analysis of the actual game itself, starting with its story. Flashing back to the first game again, that game did not really have a story. It had a background narrative being told through what is essentially a walking simulator style story. You swing through the world and you unravel what happened in the past. However, this time, you come back to a similar setting with the iconic hooks that you swing from in the Windlands series and a brand new bow mechanic as you try and actually stop a villain this time and work with other characters to make this happen. There's full voice acting, quest givers, and an overarching narrative that carries all the way through, and it's clear this is a big step up from the original, although it is a very tonally different game than the original in terms of the atmosphere that you feel. I loved the original because it felt like I was alone in this massive world exploring a place where I really shouldn't be. You don't quite feel the same in Windlands 2, for the most part anyway, as there are quite long sections where you don't run into any characters, but when you do, it brings you back down to reality that this is a more inhabited world than the original. And for that reason, I'd love to see the original game ported over to PSVR 2, just because it offers a little bit of a different experience, but one isn't really better than the other, it just depends on personal preference. In terms of polish and how built up the game feels, Windlands 2 takes the cake by far between the two. The gameplay here is more refined than ever for Windlands. It is absolutely fantastic, and the feeling of swinging around the map, especially with the bow and arrow pulling off trick shots now, is just amazing. It never gets old. The world you're in also has a low gravity, and that increases your jump distance and height, and some segments of the game rely on you just using this jump to parkour throughout the world, while throwing in a couple of swinging sections too. You can only swing from the green items around the world, such as bushes and cacti, and this adds a bit of skill and precision needed to actually make the swings that you want to. The map is pretty expertly crafted though. I never felt like there should have been a nearby bush or a nearby cactus that I wanted to swing off of that wasn't there. If there's a route you want to take to a certain objective, 99% of the time you'll be able to take that route. There's actual combat in Windlands 2 as well, which is a bit of a difference to the original game, and the bow comes in handy here. For the most part, you'll be fighting against drones and robots, that have different shields that you need to knock out with your bow, while you avoid rockets and lasers. These boss fights are very fun, the arenas are built quite well, but they can feel a little bit samey with some of the attacks being reused. The bow feels pretty good, and its drawback is not that long, meaning you won't lose tracking when pulling the drawstring all the way back. Overall, I really liked the gameplay, and especially the combat of Windlands 2, and I didn't really expect to, since it wasn't the main thing I was looking forward to before launch. I'd imagine that these are incredibly fun in co-op as well, but I did play solo throughout the entire game, so if you'd like to play it solo, then I can confirm it is perfectly fine and fun to do so. Although the game does have 4-player co-op, which is just awesome. I might have to try that out and do a video on that at some point, because that sounds amazing, and the full campaign can be done in co-op, which is probably the biggest leap from the first game to the second. The campaign will take you anywhere between 4 to 6 hours, I've really heard. I was around the middle of that, about 5 and a little bit hours, but I also have seen some people speedrun it in under 2. The game also carries over the hidden plates from the first game, so if you'd like to go and explore and get those collectibles, you can. I did do a bit of exploring, I didn't get them all, but my playthrough wasn't just going from objective to objective, I did do a bit of exploring on the side, so yeah, you'll probably be able to knock the campaign out in a little bit less than my time, but you are going to get a fair bit of content in this one. Lastly, it has a bunch of comfort options from vignetting to snap turning. I personally had all of these off to make the game as immersive as possible, but if you struggle with motion sickness, especially with swinging around in a game like this, there are plenty of options for you in terms of comfort and controls. Overall, I really enjoyed Windlands 2. A game that came out back in 2021, but has been given new life on PSVR 2 with a fantastic port by VRMonkey. Please do let me know if you're looking forward to picking it up, if you're going to or if not. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to our patrons and YouTube members Luke Bentley, Phil Irving, Hazit Mirza, Ace Gamer, Hippie Pickle, Jin007, A License to Chill, Sun WTF, Piosco, Fat Controllers, and Jason Parker. If you want to join the Patreon or YouTube membership, all those links are down below, which lets you get shouted out every single video, like those lovely people just did, and get an extra video at the end of every month, starting from July this month, where I'll be talking about the state of PSVR2, the industry, and YouTube in general. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope to see you all in the next one.